Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail where you can, in turn, inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we are able to do in His name. Amen. Well, I am your running host, Dean Thompson, coming to you once again from the Upward Sports Studio. Well, this week, I'm going to ask a powerful question. Stay tuned for that. But first, have you ever stopped to consider your life as a before and after picture? Maybe before running and after running, or before God and after God? Well, this week we're going to talk about that. And we're going to do it with the person who actually wrote about it herself. Please join me in welcoming to the podcast, Amanda Harwood.
Thank you, Dean.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. So now you live not too far from here, I guess, right? How far away are you?
It took me about an hour and 20 minutes to get here. I live in a little town called Dayton, Tennessee. We're also known as Monkey Town, USA, because we're the home of the Scopes Trial in Bryan College.
Oh, yeah. I used to, the guy that coached the cross-country program and track programs at Bryan College, used to be, he was a friend of mine. I think he's left, though. I think he left last year.
Possibly. But, I know I see runners all the time around Dayton wearing Bryan College singlets. So.
Yeah. Good program. Well, tell us a little bit about your family.
So I have a husband who is not a runner, but he is wonderful, supportive, and a wonderful cheerleader. I have a bonus son, 2 bonus daughters, a daughter, and between the 4 of them, we have 8 grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
7 boys and a girl.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and I'm the oldest of 3 with a brother and sister who have blessed me with 4 nieces and a nephew.
Well, you got plenty of family during family reunion time. Do they all live close by, or are you spread out?
We're pretty close. We're all in Dayton. Some live on the mountain. Some of them live out by the river.
Wow. I'm so envious.
Yeah.
My family is spread all over the United States. I literally have somebody in all 4 corners: New York, Washington, Southern California, and Florida.
Well, at least you always have a place to stay when you go on vacation.
Well, it's true. I guess that's true. But I'm always envious of those folks who can get a good bit of their family together. Because I have one family member, my brother, who lives in the state of Georgia. Everybody else lives outside the state of Georgia. So
wow.
Yeah, and we don't have anybody in Tennessee. So I just say that to say, just be glad that you got family so close by.
Absolutely.
It's a blessing for sure. All right. Well, we're going to get into a little bit more about Amanda and who she is and what she does and goals and things like that. But before we get to that, let's talk about our post of the week. Our post of the week this week comes from Melissa Rotaries. She said, yesterday's marathon training kickoff run, easy 3-miler with 4 times 25-second strides at the end. Super hot and sweaty, and it felt good. I know the heat is making me stronger. Run followed by anterior strength workout and stretching. Have a blessed day. I love this sentiment that it's super hot and sweaty, and it felt good, right? Because so many times we look at when it's super hot outside, we look at that as being, well, it's automatically a bad day if it's super hot out, right?
I feel like the more I sweat, the more productive I've been.
That's a good way to look at it. Like the sweat is productivity itself.
Right. I'm getting rid of all the bad. I'm just getting rid of all that waste. It's coming out my pores.
I like it. So do you prefer running in the heat then versus running in the cold, or?
Used to, I would say yes. But as I've gotten older and a few of my running partners over the years have been more on the winter side of running, I've learned to appreciate and embrace the colder weather as well.
Yeah.
It does make breathing easier, but the training all summer in the heat also makes that breathing easier when the weather does get colder.
That is true.
And I agree with her. Strength training, I felt like, or do feel like that when I was doing more strength training, I was running faster So I'm trying to get back into that too. I've kind of been focused more on running and training currently. So.
Well, good. So do you enjoy strength training?
I do. I feel like I need to be moving in order to feel like I'm actually doing something. Whereas you're stationary when you're strength training, you're usually using a machine or, doing those sit-ups in the floor or push-ups. And I don't know, I've just always felt like walking and running are the things, or dancing, that's my other thing, are the things that are getting you out and really, burning those calories.
Yeah, well, that's interesting way to look at it. The other thing, again, you just mentioned it, that other thing that I like about this post is just paying attention to the little things. Strength training is one of them. She talks about, she did strides. These are all these little extra things that we do. You just mentioned you felt like you were running faster when you were doing those extra things.
A strong core leads to a lot of your speed.
Yeah. So they're good things. A lot of times, just like you say, sometimes we feel like we're not doing a whole lot. When we stretch, it seems like a waste of time to stretch,
Yeah.
So I have a hard time. I'm as bad as anybody about getting through with my run and then moving right into doing something rather than taking that time.
Me too. And I feel like if I'm doing that stuff, I'm stretching, because I'm still being active. It's not like my muscles are cooling down, but
yeah, but it's not real stretching if you're not doing stretching exercises. So, but all of those things, they may or may not make us faster. But they will insulate us from injury, and that's pretty important. So,
yes.
Our trivia question from last week. We talked about the 1924 Olympics. There was a very famous race that took place in the 400-meter run on that 500-meter track that we talked about. Who was the winner of the men's 400-meter dash, and why is it significant? Did you know the answer to this one?
I did and I didn't. I had to refresh myself because I'd heard it in previous podcasts, but Eric Liddell. And he's from Great Britain, and he won the 400 meters, setting a world record. Is that right?
Did he set a world record?
That was what I found when I looked him up.
He may have.
He set the world record that year.
Okay. He was, Eric Liddell is the guy have you ever seen the movie Chariots of Fire?
I have not. It was filmed the year I was born.
Yeah? It
is on my to-watch list, especially since I've been listening to this podcast because I've heard reference to it so often.
Yeah, it's a great movie because it's not a Christian movie, so to speak, but it is a Christian movie at the same time. It was never intended to be a Christian movie, but the whole movie's about Eric Liddell in the way in his Christian faith. That's the centerpiece of the whole movie. And so Eric Liddell was he was Scottish, so he was from Great Britain, Scotland, and he was a 100-meter runner. He ran the 400 too, but his event was the 100 meters, and he was entered in the 100 meters at the Olympics. Well, the 100 meters took place, the heats took place on Sunday. Well, with his deep Christian faith, he felt that he could not participate in anything on Sunday. It was the Sabbath. And so he would not participate in the 100. And of course, there was enormous pressure on him to go ahead and participate and say, look, just make an exception this one time. It's the Olympics. This only comes around every 4 years, and lots of pressure on him. But he's like, no, God didn't say the Sabbath day is a Sabbath day sometimes or most of the time. He said it is the Sabbath day.
Right. And I felt like God blessed him,
for sure.
For him sticking his ground, and he managed to beat the 400 meters, even though the 100 meters was his event. So.
Yep. So he didn't run the 100, but he ran the 400 instead, which he wasn't supposed to run.
Which is 300 more meters. I mean,
yeah,
that's extra stamina to come up with.
Yeah, it's a different race for sure. So he wasn't really trained for that race. He was trained for the 100. But yes, as you said, he did win that race. Imagine training your entire life for something and then finding out that you can't do it because it conflicts with your faith. I mean, that would just be, it would be so heartbreaking.
It would be. And I feel like maybe I struggle a little bit with that myself because I do some Sundays runs, but I feel like even though it's training, it's also helping me, mentally, physically, and allowing me to, worship in a way, because I have a lot of my talks while I'm on my runs with him. So
yeah. Well, I don't know if Eric Little never ran on Sundays, or if he. I don't think
just because it was an event, maybe.
I think it was because it was an event,
considered work in a way.
And events weren't supposed to be held on. But I either way, whether what you consider to be work and not work. I think Jesus he talked about that in the New Testament, right? He talked about getting the donkey out of the ditch. Not everything that we would normally call work necessarily is not to be done on the Sabbath.
Right.
But
that would be considered being a good Samaritan. You don't want to leave a donkey in a ditch.
Right. So we have, it goes both ways, and that's for the Holy Spirit will convict us one way or the other. I have been on this podcast just recently talking about how I've been convicted that I don't do a good enough job on the Sabbath, that I need to do a better job. So maybe it's good that this happens to come up right now. But interestingly, so it's the 100-year anniversary of this race. And I looked it up. It was on July the 11th. So we're just past that 100 years since that race took place. So that's pretty cool.
Upward Sports equips churches to run self-sustaining sports ministries in their communities. Whether you're a sports fanatic or on staff at a church, Upward Sports will give you all the tools you need to run a first-class sports ministry that allows you to reach families in your community. Upward Sports offers basketball, soccer, flag football, cheerleading, volleyball, baseball, and softball through league and camp offerings. At Upward Sports, we want to help your church make a difference and give you increased opportunities to share the gospel. Learn more today at upward.org. That's upward.org.
All right, we're back. And if you have not been paying attention on Thursday nights, please tune in on Thursday nights. You have to be a Run Club member to participate on Thursday nights. But on Thursday night, we do a live session. And during that live session, you can ask any question you want to ask. And I will, if I can't answer it, I'll try to find an answer to it and get back to you. But most of the time, I can answer the questions, those running related questions at least. So, and also, submit your story. We keep saying that over and over again. Amanda took us seriously, and she submitted her story. And not only did she submit her story, but she drove for an hour and a half to get here so she could actually present that story herself. And so you can do that too if you would just send your story in and let us know. We'll be glad to have you here. This is so much fun.
I've been listening to the podcast since the beginning of the year, and I've heard that's maybe a couple of times a day when I managed to get multiple episodes in a day. So it was kind of like it was, hitting home, write your story. So finally I made myself sit still long enough at the computer to get that in there.
That's the hard part, right?
That is.
Yeah.
I think about the story all the time, but actually putting it on paper, that's the hard part.
All right. Well, other thing that I want to mention too here is that if you're listening, somehow maybe you're like Amanda, you found this podcast because you were just looking for something to listen to or whatever, and you just happened on the podcast and you're thinking, well, I'm not really a runner. I'm more of a walker than a runner. Well, you're welcome. Walkers are absolutely welcome to join us. You do not have to be a runner to join Run Club. We actually have plans for walkers. So join us. All right, so tell us a little bit more about yourself. We'll learn a little bit through your story, right? But what do you do for a living?
I'm a nurse for 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
I graduated in May of 2004.
All right.
Yeah. So I've seen several different areas of nursing in my time. Currently, I work in surgery, and a lot of my background has been ICU and dialysis. So,
Oh, wow. So what's your favorite kind of nursing?
I enjoy ICU.
Do you really? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Especially when I am helping people. I know it kind of sounds I'm kind of like House in a way. I like the puzzle of it too, but I also enjoy that I'm helping make people better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I also enjoy surgery. It's a different way of thinking about nursing. So
yeah, I guess so. I guess you see. Are there particular types of surgeries that you work with, or is it?
I work at Ray Medical Center, so we do a lot of general surgery like gallbladders, appendixes, bowel, GI lab. Get your colonoscopy; it saves lives.
I need to. God may have a ear for a reason.
And ortho and cataracts make up a good bit of what we do.
Cool. What do you want to say? How old you are?
In the words of Mark Twain, and I'll have to look at this quote because I wrote it down. Age is mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
Amen.
42 years young.
All right, good. Every
trip around the world or around the sun is a reason to celebrate.
Yeah, amen. I totally agree with you. Well, I know that you're going to tell us a little about your running journey and your story, but you've been running for a while now, right?
Yes, I walked my first 5K in 2011. I was doing Weight Watchers at the time, and my Weight Watchers leader talked me into signing up for the Strawberry Chase in Dayton. So we walked it together, and I ran probably the last tenth or two of it, to cross the finish line, because you just kind of get that extra burst of energy when you see that finish line coming up. So I think that's where I got, like any race I do, I usually end up sprinting when I get to the finish line or, close to it. So I think that's what started that, and just the energy from the race and the people there. And I didn't realize that it was such a close-knit community, there. It doesn't matter how fast or slow you are. They all support each other. Yeah,
that's one of the things I love about running. So how much do you run these days?
Usually 3 or 4 days a week. Currently, I am using the Galloway method, especially with the heat. I feel like it makes the heat and humidity a little more manageable.
For sure.
So I've been doing usually a 2-to-1, 2-minute run, 1-minute walk.
Morning or evening?
Just whenever I can fit it in.
Okay.
Depending on the surgery schedule. I've been trying to do more mornings just because it's not as hot.
Yeah. I've just for some reason I've been running in the mornings recently, and I normally don't run in the mornings. I don't know why. I get this itch. I want to get out and go run, and I work from home, so I can really do it anytime during the day. So I wind up running before lunch most days. And what I've noticed is, it's cooler, but man, it's more humid in the morning.
Yes, it is. I noticed usually not even a half a mile in, and I'm already soaked.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I tend to be a little bit of a procrastinator. I mean, I love the run once I get started, but it's just making myself get started. So sometimes it is an evening run.
That's the way it is for all of us, right? So what's your longest run?
13.1 or a half marathon. So I've entertained the thought of a full marathon, but I haven't embraced it yet.
Okay. Well, maybe next year you can do the Couch to Marathon.
Maybe.
Who knows? So tell people kind of what pace when you run let's say you go out and you run an easy 5 miles, what pace do you normally run?
Well, I like to say I'm probably like a turtle running through peanut butter. I kind of go with what feels good at the time. This summer, my average mileage has been 12 to 14 minute miles currently.
Oh, good.
But when it starts to cool down a bit, I usually can get anywhere from a 9 to 11 minute mile. During 5K races, I'm usually around a 10 to 11 minute mile.
Okay, cool. Well, good. Well, I like for people to kind of get in, it's a little bit different audience for a 16-minute a mile runner as there is to a 7-minute a mile runner. So you're kind of right in the center of those.
Yeah,
those folks.
I am average for my age,
That's
according to the statistics.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Nope. All right. And you mentioned that you do the Galloway method, which I think is, I think that has created a lot more runners than there used to be because people feel more comfortable with that.
I think it's what eventually led to me being able to run my first full 5K without stopping.
Yeah.
I was on a 5-mile run and I did the warm up in the Galloway method. And then I did the 5K in the middle of that warm up. And then I cooled down with the Galloway method. But I think just building up to it was how I was able to accomplish running a full 5K.
Yeah.
It kind of broke it down and made it more achievable to me.
Yeah. So do you do most of your runs solo or with a partner or?
I have done both over the years.
Yeah.
I've been a loner and then I've had running partners. Amber was one of my running partners, and she was the first one to ever get me out in the wintertime to run.
Oh, cool.
And then this year I've been training with Stacy Swafford. She is one of the members of the Southern Soul Sisters of Tennessee.
Okay.
She lives in Dayton as well, and she was kicking up the Southern Soul Sisters again, and I joined them to run with the group because I had never done that before. I always thought I wasn't fast enough.
Yeah.
And I come to find out that there's all kinds. There's people who walk, there's people who run, and we just all kind of fall into our own things.
Yep.
But when she heard my story and that I was going to be training for the Great Smoky Mountain Half in September, she offered to train with me. And I'm so proud of her because she does not enjoy the heat, but she has been such a trooper and a good friend.
That's awesome.
And then I have a long distance running partner that I met at last year's Great Smoky Mountain race. And his name's Jimmy Tucker. He's from Powell, Tennessee. So we kind of text and keep each other accountable. And we meet up occasionally for races. We did the Cates Cove Loop Lope last year in November.
Oh,
and
cool.
We're getting ready to do the Roswell Area 13.1 in Roswell, Georgia.
Yeah. Cool.
August 17th.
Well, fun. That's fun. That's awesome. If you're out there and you're wondering, we're talking about the Galloway method. If you don't know what that is, it just struck me there may be some folks that don't know what that term means. Galloway method is a method of running where you run and then you walk and you run and you walk, and you have these defined intervals typically where like in Amanda's case, she's running for 2 minutes and then she's walking for a minute and then she runs for 2 minutes and walks for a minute. And it really, especially like you said, during the winter time, it's a game changer for a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Amanda, your story is called Before and After, and you're going to talk a little bit about Amber in this story. So I'm going to let you take over and read your story.
Okay, bear with me a second. Let me find my story.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I should be able to say it from the top of my head, but I don't want to leave anything out.
No, you don't. There you go.
All right. So, my story is titled Before and After. Just like BC and AD, my running journey has a before Amber and an after Amber. Amber was my sister-in-law that was taken in a tragic car accident in 2019. She was more than my family. She was my friend and my running partner. My journey began in 2011 when I walked my first 5K. I enjoyed the race atmosphere so much that I began to start learning to run. By fall of 2012, I ran my first half marathon. I started running for all the usual reasons, weight loss and health. However, I also found that it helped me mentally as well, suffering with depression and childhood trauma when I would allow it to. I was a Christian in the sense that I believed in God and thought being a nurse and caring for the sick and trying to always do the right thing, I was doing enough for the Lord. I'd signed up for the Great Smoky Half Marathon in 2018, but deferred related to a medical emergency. Again, in 2019, I had to defer once again because of the accident that claimed the life of Amber on September 5th, 2019, and that was the Thursday before my scheduled race. In 2019 through 2020, there were challenges that shook me to my core. Amber was called home at the age of 33, leaving behind my younger brother and my young niece. I helped him navigate through this new life, all the while feeling just as lost. Then COVID came along and turned the world upside down, especially affecting those of us in the medical field. To top it all off, I lost my father in May of 2020. We were estranged, but I was soul-stricken to know that we would never have the chance to make it right on this side of heaven. Running became my escape during these trials, but I also found running started bringing me closer to God. I decided I was going to complete this half marathon that had evaded me for 2 years. But this time I had a greater purpose. I was going to run it in memory of Amber. Since then, I've completed the race 4 times, every year since she's been gone. I've even increased the goal by doing the Black Bear Double, which includes the 5K the evening before and a half marathon the next morning for the past 3 years. I felt God pulling me to do this as a way to always remember that beautiful red-headed woman that became such a big part of my life. This year, I've also started to grow in my spiritual journey by reading the Bible chronologically in a year through the Bible recap, and I found the Run for God podcast and became a member of the club. My faith has grown in the 2 difficult years, and I've learned more about having a true relationship with Jesus. I know, just like the story of Footprints, he was carrying me through those hard times. He did not leave me alone. I've also have felt the call of Jesus to do more for Amber's memory by running for my first charity bib this year. I chose to support the new local chapter of the Boys and Girls Club of the Ocoee region, Ray County unit. Children meant so much to Amber, as well as our community, and I'm incredibly excited to be able to help the children of our community. The environment created for these children to grow in life and faith is inspiring.
Wow. Well, first, I'm so sorry to hear about Amber. That's always tough to lose somebody when they're young.
Yes.
It's just...
Tragedies never happened in our family until this. So it was... I mean, I've been around people who've been through tragedies like this and supported, but never had it this close to home. Yeah.
And it's not the same. It's not...
No.
You can't imagine unless you're there.
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned that this is a way a lot of people really start to get into running, is using running as an escape.
Yes.
For some people it's something like what you went through with your dad, and the mind games that you play with yourself because of everything that happened, because of what happened there. But for some people, I've got a really good friend of mine who was an alcoholic, and he took up running and is, obsessed with it now because it took the place of that obsession. So it was kind of a different kind of escape, right?
Yeah.
So it's always been...
There's different paths that you can go with your obsessions, and I just knew that drinking and drugs were not the ones for me, so running kind of became that in a way to kind of try to escape those things.
Yeah. So let me ask a provocative question here. Would your relationship with God be what it is without her having passed away, or your dad?
It's a really hard question to answer because I believe God is sovereign over all.
Right.
And I believe he uses the tragedies to the good. So sometimes I wonder if the tragedies occurred to bring me closer to him, but they always serve a greater purpose.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. I would never think that's why it happened, but it's just one thing that
Right.
it's the way God weaves everything together, and it serves so many different purposes, right?
It's definitely an amazing tapestry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, we talk about challenges all the time, and what I thought about this when I was reading through your story was that we all have a story. And all of our stories have a lot of similarities, and all of our stories are different. And I don't know why that struck me in reading your story, because you mentioned COVID in here. We all went through COVID, right? So we have that we all have that in common. We all went through it.
Yes.
But your experience as a nurse was way different than my experience as a coach, right? And so we're the same, but we're different.
Right. And some days, I hate to say it, but I actually miss some of the days of COVID because that was when I really became strong in my running, and that there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But I could get outside and run.
You didn't have an excuse not to get out.
I had no obligations, and no excuses.
There was a serious drop in times for a lot of people in 2020 and after, and I think that's why it was. I think a lot of people got some uninterrupted training time for a while. Yeah, I'm pretty sure of it. Yeah, interesting. All right, scripture. The first one, Philippians 1:6. You said, I was at the Chattanooga Marathon weekend when I saw a shirt that simply said, "Run the mile you are in." Then later that evening, as I was listening to the Run for God podcast, I heard Ryan Hall speaking about the book he had written by the same title. I felt like God was sending me sign after sign to reach for this goal of running for a charity bib. I also related to Philippians 1:6, being confident of this very thing, that he who has began a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ.
Yes, I had entertained the thought of a charity bib in the past, but was kind of overwhelmed with the whole fundraising part of it, because I'm not the kind to go out and ask for money, and I'm not the best event planner. I'm kind of more of a live in the moment kind of gal.
Yeah.
Because in my field, that's what you do. You live by the moment and what comes at you. So I felt like he kept kind of pushing me to up the ante and do a little something more for her memory. So
yeah. Well, what a great way to honor her, particularly since you guys ran together, and the charity, I guess, is one that she was kind of connected to. Is that what I understood?
No, she wasn't necessarily connected to it. She was a big, she was the director of our nutritional services at our local hospital. And through that, she did many things. And it's funny because just yesterday evening, I had stopped at our local Dollar General store to pick up a few things I needed on my way home from work. And the cashier, she said, "How is Amber's daughter doing?" And I was like, I kind of did a double take because she looked familiar to me, but I couldn't recall. Her name's Vicky. But she had been an employee of my sister-in-law.
Oh, wow.
At the hospital. And during her time as an employee, she went through cancer treatment. And my sister-in-law had actually did a breakfast benefit for her. And at the time, I happened to be working across the street. And my clinic, we all went over and bought breakfast and brought it back over to the clinic and had breakfast. But she just always had such a generous spirit and charitable heart. And I felt like it was something she would want me to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Well, I love the sentiment of Philippians 1:6, because I think we don't recognize this enough, that God is always working on us, trying to get us better. If we'll just pay attention to him.
Yeah.
Right? And we just have to let him work through us, and we'll get better.
When I saw the Run the Mile You're In shirt, it kind of spoke to me. And then that evening I heard the podcast and talking about his book. So of course I went and got the book and listened to it as well. And it was, and then the new Stacy, my running partner, also helps with the Boys and Girls Club, and she was helping to get it started. And so it just, all of these little coincidences that are never coincidences just kept kind of falling together. And it's like that 2x4, I think he came out and whacked him in the head with. He's like, just do this, you know, so.
Good stuff. Good stuff. The idea of running the mile you're in is something that I know whenever, I don't know how many times I've run a marathon, and in the middle of that marathon, I'm like, I can't do this I'm in the 14th mile. I'm like, I can't do this for another 12 miles. And all I do is go, all right, I can do it to 15. So I do it to 15, and then it's okay, I can do it to 16.
Yes.
So I hang on to 16, and eventually I may crash and burn, but I'm going to hold on as long as I can. So
yeah, and sometimes I break it down even further than that, and I'm just like, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my favorite sayings when the going gets tough is, just keep swimming, in the words of Dory. She was a smart fish. She's a little forgetful, but very smart.
I like that. So how do you convince yourself to do that, to revert to that, just run the mile you're in, just worry about one foot in front of the other?
I've had many things in life that I've kind of, pushed, which we all have, that tell you just, you've got to slow down. You've got to take this one thing at a time. And kind of like a phrase that one of the nursing leaders I used to work for said, or I was feeling a little overwhelmed with all that was going on. And she was like, how do you eat an elephant? Mm-hmm. One bite at a time.
That's right.
So you just break those things down until you accomplish that one thing, just like mile 15.
Yep.
You make it through mile 15, you go on to mile 16.
That's right.
And, the mind is so much weaker than the body. I mean, yes. If you can overpower your mind, your body will keep going.
Yeah, that's right. Hebrews 12, 1-3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. The hard part is the throwing off the things that hinder us, right? That's the part that's hard to do. And, I have this theory as to why that's hard. And I want to say this in a way that's not offensive or controversial, but I also want to say this, that I think we live in a world now where everything is performative. Mm-hmm. And we're always worried about what everybody thinks, and we're so worried about whether somebody's going to think we care or not. And so we take things and we think if we don't perform an emotion over something, then people are going to think I don't care.
Right.
So if, for example, somebody at my church gets really sick, and I don't ask their spouse how they're doing, well, then that means I don't care, right? And your thought is, if I don't ask how they are, then they think I don't care. Now that may have nothing to do with it, right? My mind may be on something else. I may be worried about something else. There could be lots of different reasons why I didn't ask, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the way we live in the world today, and I'm
as guilty as anybody. Just from being a nurse for many years.
You see it all the time in nursing.
Yes. And I have to maintain that poker face.
Yeah.
We often feel the things as deeply as everybody else does, but we can't always express it in the moment, because we have to be strong for whoever's going through what they're going through.
And then if we don't, then we feel guilty, mm-hmm. right? It's like tipping culture these days. We tip more in this country than anywhere in the world.
Yes.
And we tip everybody for everything. Somebody that doesn't even really do anything, they've got a tip jar out, and we're tipping them. And they do that, and we feel guilty if we don't leave a tip.
Yeah.
right? Because it's there, so probably we're supposed to do that. And then if we don't do it, we'll feel guilty. And that's kind of how we feel about our emotions if we don't show our emotions. We feel guilty like we're supposed to show them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's crazy. Yeah, we got to get on with it. And back to that verse, when we get hung up on things like that, that hinders us from moving forward in whatever it is that we're doing.
And I think sometimes also what hinders us is we doubt ourselves.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that was kind of where I was with the running for the charity bib. I doubted myself that I could get out there and raise the funds for the charity bib, and worried about, if I didn't, what was I going to do, so.
Yeah. That's exactly. Well, the bottom line is, just like the verse before, God wants to move forward with us, but we've got to get rid of those things that get in our way, right? Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then you said, this verse has been my life raft through many trials throughout my life. I know that through him I can overcome any obstacle set in my path and be content with this path he has chosen for me. Is it hard to be content with that?
Yeah, I definitely struggled with why Amber had to die, along with many other things that have happened in my life that were beyond my control. However, I chose to view those events as, experiences that shaped me into the person I am today, and use that for my strength rather than my weaknesses. That's
great. That's what the Bible tells us to do in James, right? It tells us to use those things for sure. Yeah. How did I think about this idea of I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and the way that you talk about you've used that? How did you use that verse in 2020 when we were going through all that COVID stuff and with the nursing? And I bet that played a big role then.
It did. To answer that question, I did. I worked a lot of overtime. I was one of the fortunate ones who didn't manage to contract COVID right away. I was 2 years into it and was starting to think maybe I was one of those people who just couldn't catch it.
Yeah.
Because, I had been all around it. And then it snuck up and bit me. But it was like February of 22, I think, when I finally managed to catch it.
Not
but
bad.
One of the phrases I coined during that time, and maybe somebody else had said it before, but I had never heard it. I said that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
It may pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass. And all you can do, just like with running, is take it one step at a time.
Yeah, you're right. That's good. That's good stuff. It's good stuff. And one of the things that I recognize about this verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, is that I was thinking about this in the context. My wife and I were having a discussion, and she my wife has some lung issues, and we were talking about it. She wasn't feeling very well, and she said, I'm not worried about it. God's going to heal me. Because I was asking her about, has she called her doctor? And, I said, well, God gave you those doctors too. Don't be like that guy who drowned waiting for help from God, and he sent help. And and it's not she's right or I'm right. It's which one is right. What does it look like when we rely on God to strengthen us?
Right.
Does that look like sitting back and saying God's going to help me, or does that look like taking the initiative and calling the doctor? Which one is right? That's what makes that so hard, isn't it?
I think it's a combination of both. You have to have faith that Jesus or God gave those physicians the knowledge to help you. That's part of having faith in him, is having faith in he is the great physician.
Yeah.
But he has physician assistants, or, that's what I like to call the doctors. So,
well, that was my point in our little discussion. But her point was just as strong, that God can heal anything, anytime when he gets ready, right?
Right.
So, I don't know. It's just
and he has a path for all of us.
That's right.
He will heal us in his time, and he will call us home in his time.
That's right. And usually when there's a debate, my wife's usually the one right. That's right. So
that's smart thinking, Dean.
She just has such good intuition, and I so don't have good intuition. So, question: what obstacles have you faced, and how has God strengthened you to overcome them? I've talked about the end of the job that I had for 25 years. And, I went through some pretty dark times at that time, as you might expect. But eventually the clouds lifted. Like you said, this too, it did pass. And I think that that's something that people miss about.
Well, 25 years is a long time.
It is.
16 was my longest running.
Yeah.
Yes. In my nursing career, I was with Memorial for like 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I wanted something closer to home.
Yeah. Well, have you watched The Chosen?
I have started watching it, but I haven't. I have a hard time sitting still. I always say I'm like a shark. If I sit still, I die. Because usually within about 30 to 45 minutes of laying down, I'm asleep.
Yeah.
So it makes it difficult to get through a program. I end up watching the same episode 2 or 3 times.
Well, I bring up The Chosen because the Chosen is, if there's anybody out there who doesn't know what The Chosen is, it's a very good depiction of Jesus's life on earth. It's based on the Bible, and the story's in the Bible, but it fills in some of the gaps that the Bible doesn't. And a lot of people go, "Oh, that's blasphemy. You can't fill in the gaps. But
I think it gives you a visual of what you're reading.
Yes, and it could be. It's a picture of what could be, and they say that this is what could be. We're not saying this is exactly what happened in these in between times, but it's what's interesting to me is to see the personalities of the disciples and how imperfect they were. I mean, we read about that in the Bible, but when you see it on the screen, it's comforting. It's comforting because we know that we're not perfect and that we mess up and we feel so stupid when we mess up.
And I mean, that kind of leads to one of my favorite God stories is probably jumping ahead in questions, but
you're good.
The story of David. He was a man after God's own heart, but he was not perfect.
That's right. That is right.
So that gives me hope that I can be, you know.
Yeah. God used so many imperfect people in the Bible, and it's comforting with all of them.
And I think he had a purpose for that, and that was to let us know that we all fall short, but there is still hope.
Yeah. I guess with The Chosen, Matthew has a really quirky personality.
Oh yeah.
in the show, and sometimes I do. I feel guilty about some of my personality quirks. I certainly have some, and sometimes I feel guilty, and then I see that and I think, oh, God made all of us a little different, and it's okay to be a little different as long as you're applying it right.
Right.
And so, I think that it's I like the idea. It makes me feel better. Another question: has God been trying to reach you? Have you been listening to him?
Get a new lawnmower.
Oh, you've listened to too many. Oh no. Never. Well, I think God's always trying to reach us, right? And I think I listen sometimes, and sometimes I don't, right? That's probably the way most of us are.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes sometimes God is just speaking to me while I'm out on a run and it's quiet and there's nothing going on, and he just it's just a gentle little thing, And then there's some times where I'm acting like Dean and he needs to use a 2x4 and smack me upside the head with it.
Yes.
And that
I agree with that. There was I was doing a training run. It's been probably about a month ago. I was at Camp Jordan. My husband was going to a show at Camp Jordan, and I figured I would just run the track and get my long run in while he was doing that. And it was hot. It was so hot with the humidity. It was like 101. And I was just kind of praying to him, and he sent a breeze. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, all the way around the track, because that breeze just hit the sweat and cooled me right off.
Yeah. That's a cool story. Is that the way God usually gets your attention, in a gentle way, or do you have those 2x4 moments too? Well,
I am really stubborn and hard-headed, and I say that's how I've survived all these years. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Good stuff. Last question. How has your relationship with God affected your journey with running? It's funny you ask this question this way, because most of the time we think about this question the opposite way. How has our running affected our relationship with God? Not how's our relationship with God affected our running? So I like this question.
I feel like they go hand in hand. I mean, it takes a lot of faith for both of them.
It does. And just the parallels of
strengthening those muscles.
Strengthening the muscles, the trials, the
endurance.
There's just so many
perseverance.
Things. Yeah. I think it gives the solitude of running a meaning. Mm-hmm. There was a movie that came out back in the 60s. It was called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. Actually, it was a book first by Alan Silito. But it's called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. And I think there is a loneliness to being a long distance runner. Yeah. I mean, that's a real thing. And, but I feel like when you have God, you're really never alone. Mm-hmm. You may be by yourself, but you're never alone, because right. God's always there with you. And so those are some of the best conversations we have, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're running, so you're trying to think of anything but that run and the discomfort of that run. So I think that kind of opens your mind to be able to hear, Jesus better.
That's a good way to put it. It is so hard to stay on track as a runner or a walker. The world also makes it difficult to stay on track spiritually, too. For pennies a day, Upward Sports Run for God Run Club can make both of these journeys more fun and much easier. Join the Run for God Run Club and get access to training plans, videos, and the best group of active Christians you will find anywhere. Go to runforgod.com and sign up today. All right, we're back. So, do you have any big running goals? Anything you want to, any particular race you want to run, or a goal you want that you?
Well, I'm currently training for the Smoky Mountain Half. It's September 7th in Townsend.
As a charity thing, that's a goal. So you're in the middle of that one now,
right? And I'm doing the Roswell Area 13.1 in a couple of weeks, and that's kind of I was like, if I can train to do that run and I make it through that run, then I should be golden for the Great Smoky Mountain Half.
Yeah.
So because this will be my 5th year, of course, doing that race.
So how can people help you with the?
So I have a Facebook page, and I have posted it on Run for God Run Club on Facebook, but also I will post it again. It's run sign up /BCGOR. And you can donate there. And the fund, it's through the Wonder Project. They manage the fundraiser for the charity bib. And then once the funds are collected, they get given to the Boys and Girls Club of Ray County.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I love Boys and Girls Clubs. They do good. The ones that I've seen them in a few communities, and everyone I've seen has done really good stuff. So I'm sure they do good stuff in Ray County.
Yes, they love Miss Nikki.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing is I am starting to chip away at one of my bucket list items, and that is to eventually do a half marathon in all 50 states.
Okay.
So I will be knocking out Georgia this month.
All right. Oh, good. That's oh Lord, we've got a few Run Club members, I think, that have either done it or are getting close to completing it. So
that would be.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of getting started. I've entertained it for a few years, but I also am working around it in that my number one race every year is the Great Smoky Mountain Half in memory of Amber. It's my priority race every year. So anything I get on top of that is gravy.
Yeah. Well, cool. That's a good goal. I like that. So what church do you attend?
I currently do not have a church home.
Okay.
But I have visited several churches. Being in the medical field and having to work weekends and, because hospitals never sleep.
Yeah.
Now being in a position where I am off on the weekends, I am looking for a church home.
Oh, cool. Well, I hope you find one soon.
Thank you.
It's always great to be plugged into a good church community as well.
Yes.
Yep. What's your favorite running story? Do you have one?
I actually have a couple. One of them was recommended by a nursing friend of mine, and it was called Running. Running with Sherman, and it's written by Christopher McDougall.
Yep.
And it's about a donkey who they say they should just take him out to pasture and send him over the Rainbow Bridge, but this family takes him in and decides to rehabilitate him while training for running.
Yeah.
And they get other people in the community involved, and it ends up being this whole they have Team Sherman, and they end up having like this team that is fulfilling this quest of healing, because one of the men, I think his name's Zeke, he's suffering from depression, and then Sherman he's getting stronger by doing this run. So it was just a great uplifting story. And then
Christopher McDougall writes well too. Mm-hmm. He tells a good story.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
And then the other one is called The Long Run by Charles Butler and Matt Long. It's about the New York City firefighter who was hit by a bus on a bicycle. Mm-hmm. And that kind of tickled my nursing bone because he went into detail about all the injuries he suffered.
Yeah.
And he is a miracle.
Yeah.
He should have died.
Yeah.
But he went on to complete an Ironman.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
incredible.
It's like, it makes me say, when you ask me if I might ever do a marathon, it's like, how could I not? I mean, look at everything that man went through, and he did it.
Yeah.
I am perfectly healthy,
Yeah.
How could I say no?
Well, what's your favorite running story related to something you've done running? Do you have one of those?
Yeah. I mean, every year is an experience. I guess over the course of the last 5 years, I've experienced all kinds of weather. The first year was absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
It wasn't too hot, wasn't cold. It was nice, bright and sunny. And then come year 3, It was raining the whole time. After about mile 5, 6, somewhere around in there, I started giving up and just walking just because I felt like it was Chinese water torture.
Waterlogged.
I had never ran in that much rain.
Yeah.
And then last year, it was definitely a battle of humidity because the 5K, there came a large downpour right before the 5K started. It stopped right as the race was starting, and I did the 5K no problem. It was a little humid, but the humidity carried on over into the next day, and it was just so sticky that day.
Yeah.
So,
But you did it.
yes,
But you did
yes.
it. Yeah. Very good. All right. Do you have one of those God winks kind of moments that you can think of off the top of your head that comes to mind? I've told the story before about how when I started working with Run for God, I wasn't making nearly as much money as I made in the job I was in before, and how I worked with Run for God for a year. And I don't know if you've heard that story, but
Yes.
but yeah, that kind of a story where God just kind of showed up just out of nowhere. And
Well, I mean, just kind of like what I was talking about earlier I feel him in every run, in some form or fashion. There's always some way he sends me a sign that says, that causes me to say, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
Just like with the run at Camp Jordan, in the breeze.
Yeah. That's because you're looking for it.
Yeah.
You're looking for signs of God. And
I guess probably one of the first times he really kind of reached out and grabbed my attention was, I would probably have to say that first year that I was really running hard, training hard in 2020 for the first half that I was planning on running for Amber. That summer in the midday heat was when I ran my first 5K without stopping.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I actually, at the end, I was saying, I prayed and thanked him, and I actually had an old man stop his walk and take a picture of me standing on the swinging bridge in Dayton, which is what leads to our local walking track.
Yeah.
And I had him take a picture of me with my muscles showing that I had accomplished a 5K without stopping.
And he happened to be there just at the right time
Yes.
to take that picture.
Yep.
Yep. God coordinating things.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's a time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something I've written about the intersection between running and faith. Well, many people know the story of Alfred Nobel. Most people know, I should say. I'll share a little, and then we'll talk about how his story can help us ask a powerful question. This one's called A Powerful Question to Ponder. The Nobel Prize is one of the most coveted awards in the world. Each year, the Nobel Prize is considered to be awarded to 6 category winners: peace, chemistry, physics, physiology or medicine, literature, and economics. We are all familiar with the words Nobel Prize, but have you ever heard the story about how it came to be? Alfred Nobel was a very smart man who became rich while pursuing his goals in chemistry, engineering, and industrialism in the late 1800s. His 355 inventions were changing the world. The most famous of his inventions was dynamite. In addition, he started companies that promoted and manufactured different sorts of armaments. A peculiar thing happened when his brother died. A newspaper in France mistakenly thought it was Alfred who had died instead of his brother Ludwig, and they published an obituary for Alfred entitled "The Merchant of Death is Dead." Upon reading this headline, as the legend goes, it disturbed Alfred Nobel to learn that all of his hard work was only recognized as being related to death and destruction. So he set out to change his real obituary before it was published at the appropriate time. In his will, he gave nearly $200 million of today's dollars to set up a foundation that established these awards for people who were doing good things in the world. The Nobel Foundation is still thriving today as a result, and we know Alfred Nobel for something entirely different than the erroneous obituary that had indicated 8 years before his death. So here's the question. If someone mistakenly printed your obituary today, what would it say? Alfred Nobel accidentally had the opportunity to consider that question, but we can purposefully ask that question of ourselves, having learned how important it can be. And having considered the question, the answer to that question, we can make changes to our obituaries today, just as Alfred Nobel did more than a century ago. I have watched friends and families deteriorate in very sad ways over the last decades of their lives. In many cases, I know that 3 hours a week of vigorous exercise would have made a big difference in their lives. And the truth is that I don't know anyone who regrets having made the decision to be active during their lives. I have said many times, I've never heard anyone finish a run and say, I wish I had not done that. The same thing can be applied to our lives in a more macro sense. Regret is a powerful thing. We don't like to talk about it, but I think it can be motivating to do so. I don't know about you, but I have thought many times about what is going to happen to me as I age. I am driven by the desire to not be a burden to my family. I understand that there's no way to guarantee that outcome, but I want to do all I can do to avoid it. As I get older, I want to continue to be active for many reasons, but that one is as high a priority for me. I don't want to regret what I have done, or not done in this case, as my family must care for a feeble body that didn't have to be that way. It sounds a bit morbid, but no more than what Alfred Nobel faced when he read that fateful obituary. And I can't imagine the regret from people who are going to be judged harshly by our sovereign God. The Bible is very clear about what is going to happen to those who choose to live apart from God. If you choose to live apart from Him now, that will continue for eternity. Not only that, but the alternative circumstances could not be more dire. You can change that obituary in a heartbeat by accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior. If you have never done that, I implore you to go to runforgod.com/peacewithgod today and consider doing that. Today, you have time to change your obituary, but none of us know how much time there is to do it. What I know is that the best time to have done it was yesterday, but the next best time is today. Whether we are contemplating living a richer, more fulfilling life in our golden years or spending eternity with the God who made us, today is the day to ask the question, if someone mistakenly printed your obituary today, what would it say?
That's a great story.
Isn't it amazing? I wrote this story before I knew you were going to be on this podcast. And this story meshes well with what you wrote.
There's no coincidences.
No, there aren't. But yeah, this whole story of Alfred Nobel is one of the coolest legends that I've ever read. Now, there's some people who say that it's not true, that's not completely accurate, that there's a lot of sensationalizing going on there. But
well, even if he just heard a rumor about himself,
yeah, whatever it was,
yeah, it was enough to make him change his ways, or to want to do something positive in the world.
That's right. I remember I stayed on my mother for years and years and years. My mother was never in really good shape. And I stayed on her and we talked about it over and over and over again. And she might still be around today if she hadn't. She died in November of 2019. My father's still around. My father's older than her, and he's still around.
Yeah.
She probably would still be around if she had been in good shape. But when I see somebody who's not taking care of themselves, it gets me, because I know that it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Yeah.
But I'm also struck by how little most of the nuisances in life are just not a big deal. And we worry about all these tiny little things when there's these big things that we need to be considering. In Alfred Nobel's case, he's worried about making money, and I mean, that's important. He has to make a living, and he is inventing things, and
keep the wife
that's a good
happy.
thing. Yeah. But he's doing things that are being helpful, but at the same time, he's doing things that are being perceived as something completely different.
Yeah.
And in the end, we all want to be doing things that make a difference. Right. And that's what he ultimately did, I guess, huh? Sometimes we point out run for God classes a lot of times. Sometimes we get these really, I had a run for God class one time that had 3 people in it. Just 3 people. And you think, why? Why even have a class for 3
people go out and they get 3 people, and those 3 people go get 3 more people.
I can tell you some of the greatest stories about those people.
It's just like The Chosen. One fish can turn a lot.
Yeah. Well, one of those people was my mayor's wife, and she's a terrific lady. And I can tell you stories about her. She was so much fun to deal with, and it was a big deal when she did that. So God puts things in front of us, and they don't have to be big, giant things. Mm-mm. They can be little things, or they can be big things like Alfred Nobel, the Nobel Prize. Yeah, if we want to strive for those things, that's great. But they don't have to be grand, and they don't have to be something that leaves a legacy. It can be just helping a neighbor, doing something small. It doesn't have to be a lot.
Holding the door open for someone.
Yeah. But whatever we do, I think it's important that we do it regularly. And make it, Alfred Nobel became known, he got obsessed with this and became known for being something because he poured himself into it. And that's the way, with running, with walking, with being fit, it takes a daily thing. You got to work on it consistently all the time. And God wants us to be consistently in his court and following his direction for our lives. Now, we're going to mess up. We're going to have days we miss the run, and we're going to have days where we don't do what God's
Bible study.
Yeah, and we don't do what God wants us to do.
We duck when he swings that 2x4. Not intentionally.
Yeah. But the good news is that we can change those things. We can do better tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
At Upward Sports and Run for God, we're all about helping you on your fitness journey. But we also want to support you on your faith journey as well. Sign up today for the self-paced Bible in a Year Challenge and listen every day as I read through the entire Bible in 365 episodes. As a bonus, I also give you running and walking tips of the day and finish with a different encouraging quote in each episode. You must be a Run Club member to participate in this exciting and edifying challenge. Sign up and start listening today. Every week I share a reason why running and or walking is so awesome, and this is this week. It's a great stress reliever, both macro and micro. I've mentioned this one before, but I never thought about it in the sense of macro and micro. So what I mean that is that we all know about the major benefits of stress relief in running, right? Like just the idea that it lowers our blood pressure and it does good things to our body that makes us...
Makes me nicer to my coworkers.
Yeah. But it's also a good immediate stress reliever too.
Right.
Whenever you get bad news and you're like, you just want to, sometimes going out for a run when that happens is so therapeutic.
I remember the day I found out that my father had passed, and we hadn't talked in years. And all I could think about that evening, when I got home from work, I told my husband, I said, I have to go for a run. Yeah. You needed to be alone and just, and that's a good way to do it. Mm-hmm. There's something about that struggle, that physical struggle we have when we run that makes our thoughts different. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and deeper, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
The endorphins, I think, help cushion the blow of the whatever is upsetting us enough to make us want to run.
Yeah, that may be a good way to put it. Yeah. Well, the Olympics are on right now. Do you watch the Olympics? Do you love the Olympics? Do you hate the Olympics?
I like them. Like I said, I have a hard time sitting still long enough to watch anything. But since I've been listening to the podcast, I have been more interested in watching the runners and the track and field. So the runners haven't officially started yet. I guess that starts today.
At 4:00 in the morning.
Okay.
Tomorrow. Yep.
So I have my Peacock set to where I can maybe catch up on some of it in between, work and everything. But you've inspired me to want to watch more of our runners in the Olympics.
Well,
Used to, when I watched the Olympics growing up, I was more focused on the gymnastics, ice skating. I always liked this diving and swimming.
Is that so those are your favorite events?
Yeah.
Typically in the past.
In the past.
Yeah. Do you like to watch the odd sports at all?
Such as?
Well, this year I watched trap shooting. I've never watched trap shooting, but now I actually participate. We talked about it on the podcast where I did some of that myself, but I'm not very good at it.
I think I would enjoy it. I mean,
but it was fun
I
to
like
watch.
target shooting, and there was some extenuating circumstances, but I had actually planned on having my first hunting season last year, and things came up I didn't get to, but hopefully this year.
Oh, well, cool. Yeah. And for Winter Olympics, I love curling.
Yeah, I've heard you mention that multiple times.
I love
I'm not sure exactly what it is or what the goal is, but then again, I didn't know what pickleball was until I started running with my current running partner, and since then I'm starting to pick up on it a little bit. I've played a little.
Pickleball's huge. I can't believe how big it's gotten so fast.
And I guess I've been so resistant to it because they actually made several pickleball courts out of the old tennis courts in our local town that I was like, it's just a fad, it'll pass. I'm not gonna worry about that. I'm just gonna do my running and my walking and dancing, and that's what I'm doing. And then I was invited to play, and it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, I haven't played yet. I need to, because I think I would enjoy it. But like I said, I'm blown away by how popular it's become so fast. So do you prefer winter or summer Olympics?
Well, I mean, there's sports in both that I like.
Yeah.
Probably more summer, of course, because I'm a sun worshiper. No offense, Jesus. But if give me a sunny day and I'm there. Yeah.
I think, well, just the fact that track and field is in the Summer Olympics means it's better to me. But
right.
How about outside the Olympics? Are there sports that are outside the Olympics that you like?
College football.
Yeah? Okay.
Go Vols.
Okay, you're a Vols fan. All right. That's good.
I'm an underdog fan in any other case. But yes, I've been a Vols fan ever since I was old enough to know what football was. So we
have a mutual interest in hating the Bulldogs.
Yes.
Which is great. Yeah.
I like Uga. He's sweet.
Oh, well. What do you think there's anything we can do to make track and field more interesting to watch? Do you think there's a way they could change it?
I'm not sure. I mean, just making it more accessible. I mean, you kind of have to be really into it to actually go and investigate where it's going to be on. And maybe that's why I haven't really watched it so much.
Yeah.
I know you always know.
Yeah.
But I think that's because you probably do your research.
Yeah. I'm always paying
It's not
attention.
like your primetime events like NFL or,
Right. Yeah. Well, do you have any questions for me that you think people would want me to answer?
What is your favorite kind of run? Do you like out and back, loop?
That's a good
point
question.
to point?
That's a good question. I like My favorite runs are probably the ones where I'm in a town I've never been in before. Mm-hmm. And I go out and I try to make a loop out in that town. Sometimes I get lost. Sometimes I don't. And but I enjoy the idea of it and just exploring. That's probably my favorite. Yeah.
Well, I think that's where you see some of your best stuff. Like I've used Kate's Cove to train multiple times for the Great Smoky Mountain Half because all the rolling hills through there.
Yeah.
And in the summer, they close it on Wednesdays to motor vehicles. So only bikers and pedestrians are allowed to do the loop that day.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And it's so nice to go do it because, I mean, you're completely unplugged from everything. It's so peaceful. And
is it like 10 or 11 miles?
The full loop is almost 11 miles.
Okay.
Now, when you do the loop, it starts at the beginning of the loop and ends at the end of the loop without that little circle piece for the campground. Okay. That's what makes it almost 11 miles.
Okay.
So the loop is actually like 10 miles.
Okay. I've never run up there.
Oh,
I need to go up there and do it sometime. Yeah. It's beautiful up there.
It is. And those hills are tough.
I'm not a fan of hills, but. All right.
Let's see. What's your favorite running season? You kind of asked me this, so I was going to put that one back on you.
Yeah, I like, everybody likes spring and summer, so that's the obvious thing to say. Not spring and summer, spring and fall. So obviously I love fall just because you're coming out of the hot season. I do prefer summer over winter. I just don't enjoy being cold. And I don't mind it when I'm actually running. I don't mind it. But I just hate being cold in general, when I'm not running. Yes. And so, that's...
If I make it to the point of shivering, I just want to shut down.
Yeah.
And I guess one more. I know you run every day, and you've only missed one run in the last 10 years?
Has it been longer 13.
Than 13 now?
It'll be 13 soon. Yeah.
How do you stay motivated to do that every day or find time to do that every day?
Well, the time thing, it's really unfair because I have a job that allows me to run, if there's going to be funky weather, then I can run at a different time if I need to, because most of what I do is, now sometimes I'm up till 11 o'clock at night doing what I do.
Right.
Because I chose to do, something different. But I just enjoy it. And I like getting out and running. And my thing is probably the reason why I started as a streaker, if you call it that, is because I know if I take one day off, I'll take 2 days off. And then if I take 2 days off, I'll take 3 days off. And so the idea of doing it every day makes me stay consistent. If I don't do it every day, I'll have a hard time. I would have a hard time probably doing it 5 days a week.
So it's about not falling off the wagon.
I think that's a good portion of it. And but over the last, as I've gotten older and I've gotten slower, I'm finding that I just enjoy just running more.
And guys, his slow mile is still faster than my fastest mile.
So good questions.
Okay.
Thank you. How about a trivia question for this week? Our trivia question is this. They dropped 3 sports from the Olympics this year: baseball, softball, and karate. And I didn't realize that.
I didn't either.
But there were 2 new Olympic sports this year. What were they? And if you know the answer to that, you can send that to dean@runforgod.com. And if you're the first member to send me the correct answer, then you will win $20 off in the Run for God store. So, I knew I had heard about one of these 2 sports, but
I think I know one of them, but I cannot for the life of me think of what the other one is.
Yeah. You'll have to look it up. There were 3 new sports introduced in 2021 as well.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I'm sadly disappointed that they dropped softball.
yeah. I don't know. Baseball in the Olympics was kind of, softball maybe a little bit different. Baseball, I felt like in the Olympics was weird.
Yeah. I mean, but softball was always one of those sports that was really supported by females.
Yeah. I liked softball. I like softball in the Olympics better than I did baseball. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I had 2 of my daughters played softball growing up, and they were on select teams and stuff. So I always enjoyed watching them play.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, let us leave you with this motivational thought of the week. It is this: pain is temporary. It may last a minute or an hour or a day or a year, but eventually it will subside and something else will take its place. If I quit, however, it lasts forever. That's a pretty good one, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like the kidney stone.
Yeah. The trick is to think about that before we get the urge to quit, right?
Right.
That's the thing, right? Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being with us today.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked out.
Me too. Do you have any parting words for anything else you want to say?
I had a couple ideas.
Yeah.
So a couple of running quotes that have helped me in my journey. Never limit where running can take you. I mean that geographically, spiritually, and of course physically. And that was by Bart Yasso.
Yep.
The other one, if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. Yeah. And that one's by Fred DeVito. That's
good stuff. Good stuff. You know, I talked to Bart Yasso on the phone one time.
Really?
He was in South America when I got a hold of him.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next week, may God bless every step of every run and or walk. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.